Cannalachia, episode 6, right?
I think so.
Episode 5%.
We think so.
Close enough.
Go with me.
Come on, Cannalachia.
Hi, JC.
Hey, Amanda.
I'm so excited to have you back.
I am too. I'm happy to be back.
Last week was a little rough.
It was. I'm sorry about that.
No, it was my fault.
Well, I don't think it's a fault.
And then, but you're right. It's Thanksgiving, things go astray in our brain places.
Yeah, and that whole daylight savings time thing happened a couple weeks ago, and that changed. That messes with us a
Blame
little
daylight
bit.
savings.
So, well,
Anything but my disorganization.
well, I'm back.
Yay!
So, yay.
Yes. And very excited to have you back. And excited, our guest this week, Clark Kissik.
That's right. I'm excited because Clark actually reigns from back in my old stomping ground, my home. So
I love that.
I've been in Lexington, like I said in the last episode, for about 13 years, but kind of reigned from a little east of here. And I wanted to have Clark on. He, I think, is a very up-and-coming musician here in Kentucky. He's been doing some things. You just put out an album, and we can talk about that in a little bit. And I'm just really happy that that you're joining us today.
I hope I'm up and coming, because if I'm on the way down, then boy, it's not good.
Well, it's I can tell you some stories. I don't know if you know about my background, but it's a wave. You're riding a wave, man.
I always kind of say life's like at least my life's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It's
And if it wasn't that way, we wouldn't have Behind the Music. By the way, I think I just aged myself.
I know
'cause
that.
I don't
know
think it
that.
exists anymore. But that was the whole point of Behind the Music, is that literally every musician has that ebb and flow of and how they destroyed their entire career in Act 3.
yeah.
And then they came back, Act 4.
You're just getting started. So I burned my whole life down, and then I decided to do it again. So.
Yeah.
But you know what? While we get that in all areas of life, I think for an artist and for a musician, what's great about that is you get to paint the picture then.
Yeah.
You get to retell the story, you get to write the song, and that's a whole nother album.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a positive in all that.
It is. There always is.
Absolutely.
So we'll start this out, Clark. We're gonna come to you and your stories in just a second, but we're gonna start this episode like we do all of our episodes, and we're gonna talk about cannabis news. This now in cannabis news. That's my old timey telegram noise.
So before the show, we kind of always kind of talk about what news clips that we've found and what we want to talk about. And today's is something we both, I think, feel fairly passionate about that's happening. So we're just going to use that one, and we're both going to talk about it. But,
I'm madder than a hatter.
well, I mean, we talked about Ohio a couple weeks ago and how the people of Ohio had voiced their opinion and said, you know what? We want weed. Mm-hmm. And so now all of a sudden their leaders have decided, oh, well, we're going to, before we do that, let's put the brakes on and let's say, no home grows, you can't do that. We're going to increase the tax on it, and we're not going to put the tax where you really thought it was going to go. We're going to put it somewhere else. So ultimately just gut it, change it all.
So to get into specifics, the people of Ohio voted yes on their bill. I can't remember. I'm not Ohioan, so I wasn't there to vote on it. But they voted in favor of recreational cannabis. They already have medical there. And one part of the bill stated that Ohioans could grow up to 6 plants per person, 12 per household in their own homes. And that was actually due to begin on this Friday, December 8th, is when you could legally grow marijuana in your own home, and or THC cannabis. And this last night, late at night, a certain demographic of legislatures, I don't want to be too bipartisan here, but I think they've specifically come out. The GOP has come out and said that they are not interested in allowing Ohioans' voices to be heard. they don't care what the people want, and they are going to gut the bill. And the first thing they're going to do is remove the legalization of growing your own THC cannabis.
Yeah, and when we talk about that too, in past episodes, I've spoke about how I have friends and people that I care deeply about that range from both parties in this country, and I think we have way too much division in our Commonwealth and specifically in our nation. But when we're looking at Ohio specifically here, I don't think this really does any favors for the GOP in Ohio for the fact that at some point, regardless of what party you're from, when the will of the people, when they have spoken, if you're supposed to be a leader, then you need to listen. And I think the people of Ohio, they know what they want. And I think one of the biggest hurdles, or well, not hurdles, but one of the things that really frustrated me today when I was reading an article about how a specific, I think, senator there said, well, we're doing this because I don't want mold in my weed, or I don't want fentanyl in my weed. Well, I don't want mold in my weed or fentanyl in my weed either. But
that's why I want to grow it in my own house.
That's right.
Yeah.
What is the easiest way of doing it? Grow it at home. You know why? Because if you know how to make good compost tea, if you know what to feed your plants, you don't put pesticides on it, you know what's going in it. And it's not only that, but for the people who are sick or veterans who are on a budget or a limited income and they can't afford some of the cannabis they need, they have the ability to grow their own. So we have this issue where that's what you say you're doing, but we all know when the government gets involved in something, well, come on. I don't want the government growing my weed.
No, and it all goes back to follow the money, right?
Right.
Because
Exactly.
what did they do? They said, oh, you can't grow it yourself at home. You have to go out and buy it from where we have our fingers in it, our thumbs in the pie, and we're going to increase the taxes on it.
Right.
Than what you voted for.
And I'm perfectly fine with I think honest taxation. I mean,
Sure.
it costs money for programs and stuff to happen. However, ultimately the people, I think, were looking at this and they were thinking, okay, some money will go into social programs. So we've talked about how Missouri was able to give over, I think now we're looking at over $39 million this past year to their veterans who need it for medical care, legal aid, whatever it might be, which is a type of social program. It's, there's a lot of arguments about welfare in this country, but when we're talking about veterans, we're talking about people that have risked life and limb so that we can sit here and have this conversation.
Yes.
And now that they're living a life where they're suffering and their leaders are like, oh, well, you can't grow your weed at home, but you can buy it down here, but you can't afford it. I mean, come on. Something's got to be done here. And I think that, this is something that if I was living in Ohio and I had voted for this and this was happening, I'd be pissed off.
I'd be pissed off, and those people that are in their chambers right now saying that we're undoing everything that the Ohioans voiced, you would not have a job.
Right.
I would do everything in my power to make sure you did not have your job next time around.
As many would say back home, sometimes those positions need to be changed like your underpants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. I think it's kind of like they have like a direct referendum vote kind of thing like that. Like that's the most like direct democracy thing, the version that we have. Like you vote on one bill, and everybody gets to put in their, if you want to go vote on it, you can go vote on it and you can decide and like, no, we're going to back out on that. Like we need this guy sitting in North Cleveland to go,
And it's the most bipartisan. It's because my understanding is that it was a bill that was drafted like by people. It was not drafted by the legislation.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you can't quote me or verbatim on this, but since it wasn't an amendment to their constitution, and I don't know the other term, it's like slipping my mind. The way that this happened, though, it allows the legislative body there to then go in and, they could scratch the whole thing if they wanted, or they can change it to whatever they want.
Correct.
And ultimately what they've done when I look at this is they've quickly, because they want to do this as an emergency, but an emergency I think takes 2/3 of the legislative body to do so, is they're earmarking it in an alcohol bill to make this happen. I know that I also read an article that the ACLU in Ohio is slamming them hard over this. And, I think at this point we have to start asking some really hard questions in this country that why is it so deeply concerning that a plant that countries across the globe are using and have used. We have, is it 37 now?
38
38, that's right.
states have some form of legalization.
And here we are. I mean, that's over half our country. The people are speaking.
Yeah.
And our leaders need to listen.
Yeah.
And having some guidelines, great. No issue. But when you are turning around and doing the complete opposite of what the will of the people, what they want, you are no longer leading, you are dictating.
Correct.
It's not cool.
It's not.
Not at all.
You might need to write a song about that.
Yeah, for sure.
You should. I think it's a good sign. It's the new,
It's the
I don't
power
know
to the people.
Power to
No.
Power away from the
My
people.
husband is just shaking. It's his head. No,
Let's not do that.
it's weed, guys. It's not that serious.
It's there's a lot of things that I think about, and with substance abuse of all different types. We've talked about how we can abuse anything in this life, all the way up to food, whatever that may be. But I do believe that cannabis, and we say this over and over, it has its purpose, and
Yes.
And if we could get past the reefer madness and the what I think is money hunger over it, there's plenty to go around for everyone involved. I think there's a lot of healing here for our land, our people, our health, our wellness, all of that, and we need to take an initiative as a country on this, and the leaders really need to be listening, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I totally agree. I mean, it might be something we talk about later, but I've even got to where I don't know. I used to think that it would. If, let's say, now Joe Biden comes up and says, I'm for just legalization all across the board, I always thought, well, that'll win you an election. Never really understood for 20 years why it didn't just. But it's gone so far now that I don't even think it would. Everybody would be like, 38 of 50 states would just go,
Right.
That's okay, it's Tuesday,
Yeah.
And but you still just keep spinning the same circles and just regurgitating the same, I just, Kentucky, for instance, I remember back a couple months ago, they were talking about, oh, we need to study it more. And
Right.
I even my parents are like, what study, what, what more do you need?
There's so much anecdotal evidence, and there's books published from medical professionals from the West Coast who have been treating patients for decades.
There's medical literature dating back to the 1940s.
That's exactly right.
The 1940s, the goodness of weed. I've got that stupid song in my head. I'm sorry.
And
Taste the goodness of the weed.
Oh. I think we can go even further, and if I'm saying the name right, I think it was O'Shaughnessy. But if we go all the way back, there's some literature written. I think it was an Irishman, and it goes all the way back to the mid to late 1800s with the use of cannabis and cannabis extracts being used medically.
Yeah.
So it was used in the ancient days of Asia and India and all of these places.
When they excavated that giant. Do you know about the giant lady with the glass eye?
No. Tell me about it. I'm interested now.
Do you know her? She lives down the street.
No, archaeologists excavated a tomb of what they believe to be a high priest. She was 6'2". They know it was a woman because archaeologists do the things with the skeletons. She was 6'2", buried, but she had this giant golden glass eye. It was a big thing. And it was either glass or gold or glass painted gold, something to that effect. And she had all these other gold artifacts with her and a bag of weed.
She sounds like a cool Bond villain.
Right?
And just wait till she winks at you with the golden.
Yeah.
You know.
No, so she was some kind of high priestess and the Greco-Roman, I don't know exactly what era. Hi, Cat.
Hey there. How's
So,
it going?
by the way, just so you know, Clark, we have tried to lock these cats up in the back bathroom.
They're escape artists.
They know how to get out, so we just deal with them now.
Yeah.
They heard we had catnip,
Yeah.
so
But yeah, no. So literally, I mean, since pretty much like the dawn of humanity, we are aware of different cultures using cannabis for various reasons, both medicinal and spirit. Both. There are three things: spiritual, I can't speak today.
it's okay.
Spiritual, medicinal, and recreational.
That's correct. And you know, and not to forget the other parts that we know of as the hemp plant part of cannabis, but even the fibers and stuff. And we've had a lot of issues in those regulations because of marijuana. And you know, ultimately, I say over and over, and like you say, it's like we just keep spinning the wheel and kicking the can. But we really just need true cannabis legislation. We need it as a whole family for all of its purposes, and have some minor regulations there. But we are living in the wild, wild west of that. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think Ohio, I'm really hoping that the people are going to stand up and speak about that. And I think they had until yesterday evening to voice their public opinion. Obviously, this episode will air in January. So by the time you folks are hearing this, we will know what happened in Ohio. But I think if the leaders, if the people decide that what the leaders are doing is overstepping the power, I think they need to make their voice heard. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
agreed.
And I hope that the other states and commonwealths in our nation will take heed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'd be good.
I think that'd be good. Thanks.
Yeah. So anyway, let's move forward.
Moving on to Clark.
Yeah.
So Clark, one of the things we like to do, JC and I have talked about our history with cannabis use, and I always like to start off with a fun story. So, do you remember the first time?
I do.
Oh, tell us about it.
I'm not going to say any names.
Protect the innocent.
But, and then, you know, I got to thinking about it on the way up here, and like, it probably could have taught me a couple lessons about like how this is going to go, like in life and everything. But like the first, and it's like I always said, like, kind of, you know, some of my struggles in life and things that I always, we could talk about that later and everything. But I was not the first one. Like, I was always considered the one that was leading the group of like, oh, he's the one out there like ripping and running on the roads and partying and stuff. And then I was the last one out of all my friends. Like I could go through almost all of them, and like they all, you know, tried alcohol and weed and all that stuff before me. And, you know, now I'm a bit of a competitor, and I took that at a young, ignorant, youthful age that like, I'm going to be the best, you know, I'm going to be the best at whatever I do, you know, and that's very youthful and ignorant of me, I guess. You know, I've learned that the hard way.
Fair enough.
But like, I always, you know, one of my buddies, we were out at a farm party, and like they talked about how much they liked weed and how much they liked smoking and all this stuff, and they would, you know, like typical high schoolers, they just like they'd hit just barely just one little hit off a joint and just act like they were, man, it was just the craziest experience, you know, it was just wild.
Seeing pink elephants.
Yeah. But I always said, like, you know, like one of my buddy's girlfriends, she, as we progressed to get older, she became a little bit more straight-laced and didn't party as much, didn't go out as much and stuff. But I always would remind her that she was the first person to cut a Powerade bottle open and make a little gravity bong out of it. She went into my parents' tool chest and got like a little ratchet socket or whatever.
Nice.
She made like a little GB and everything, and like the ones that know her name and everything, they're like, "That's insane," you know, like that's crazy. And like, not only was it the first person, like she knew how to do it all, you know.
I love it. Is she like a pastor's wife now? You don't have to answer that.
No. Maybe in the medical profession.
Cool.
Well, that could serve some good purpose.
A very serious job.
Yeah.
But, and like they, you know, I understand people grow up and stuff over time, and they go their different paths and things. But, like we had talked to, I've had plenty of, I don't know, funny ones, I guess would be the worst. Now, for a long time there at the beginning, it was, I didn't like, and the weird part about that was that day I smoked and I was like, I just remember I kept thinking, well, this didn't do anything to me, you know? And I was bad, like when it came to drinking, like I was like, man, I'm a tank. I'm a big bad son of a gun. I can just, and that was my like, I'm indestructible. Like I just felt like I could, and weed at that time just wasn't enough for me. But then I went and played football at UK, and I can tell you, I know for a fact that I didn't smoke weed at UK because I guess, the only thing that was the summer going into my freshman year of college. I had to have had something in my system because the first day I got to UK, they drug tested me, you know, and I got signed. I was a red shirt walk on. That's called, when the NCAA comes knocking, you're going to go take the test, not our starter. You're going down there. So 5 a.m. every morning, I'd have to go down there and take that drug test and have some NCAA official standing there watching me pee and stuff. You know, it's very, 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 very fun thing to do. I guess I must have failed the first one or showed traces of something. I had to do that every single week except for like 2 during my entire, there's 12 weeks and there's 2 weeks of bye weeks. So 14 weeks I had to go take this drug test and show, and never did pop for anything else, you know. But the day that I quit, I was like, I texted my buddy and I was like, hey, come on, I'm coming to your house.
Bring me the gravity ball.
Yes. And we smoked there, and it wasn't really my thing still kind of at that time. Like I was still really partying. And when we moved on State Street, I lived on State Street for 2 years, not just one. Now, if I tap out at 45, that's probably because from those years. But I lived on State Street, and like we were partying, and it just was getting worse and worse and worse. And one of my roommates that moved in with me, he was trying to lose weight, and he couldn't lose weight drinking, so he started smoking. And I've always told him, like, man, you're like, me and you are polar opposites. Like he was always a Tupac, and I was always a Biggie guy. He was always a Kobe. I was a LeBron. He lost weight smoking weed. I put on 100. You know, like it just wasn't anything. But like we started smoking in the house and stuff, and it just kind of, you know. And I was like, I went through my Grateful Dead phase and all the typical like, oh, you smoke weed now, guy things, and like it kind of, you know, it was more of like over a couple years that like I really transitioned into it. But then there was just like one day I woke up and was like, I don't ever want to drink again. Like we talked about earlier, you know, that was kind of what I used as a form of sobriety, you know. Yeah. And but I, you know,
call it California sober.
Yeah, for sure. You know, kind of, yeah. And it was, you know, and like, obviously, you're still living in college and like you're partying all the time and you're still going out to the bars and all that stuff. But I did notice that there was like, it was like I felt for the first time that there was a light at the end of the tunnel with that stuff, that like there was an alternative. It was the first time I guess I'd really realized that was, you know, an option, I guess. And the funny part is like I'm a bad asthmatic, and like bad. Like I had to have my inhaler in the tray at UK. Like, you know, it was so embarrassing. You pull it up and there's like 7 inhalers in there, and you got 2 of them. You know, and there's 100 men on this roster. It's like, okay, I'm the guy with asthma, and there were plenty of other guys that had it and stuff, obviously. But like, you know, the weird part about me was I would try, like, you get drunk, you try to smoke cigarettes or something. I'll cough until I pass out. Like, it's crazy. I can't, like, and I've always said it's a blessing. Like, it's great. You know, I literally can't smoke cigarettes. So it's, you know, that'll help me out. But like weed, I could. It was, you know, my brother had a professor at Moorhead that he had done some tests on his son that was a cigarette smoker for years. And like, his thing, and like I came with that theory one day. I was like, man, I don't know how to explain it, but like weed ain't nearly as bad as cigarette smoke. I said, now I don't know if that's real science or whatever, but, and he was like, well, he's like, my professor, I don't want to give his name out or whatever, but he came back in and was like, he came with those same results. Like he tested on his son, and like his oxygen levels went up and all this stuff, and oddly enough, I go to get my oxygen test all the time at the allergist, and like my oxygen levels went up like multiple times.
It's interesting because there is some literature out there that shows that certain terpene profiles in certain strains of cannabis work as a bronchodilator. So that is a great possibility.
The only way I could describe it is like, I always like, even running and stuff, I would feel like a congestion in my chest. And I don't know if I just, you start coughing one day or something, and I just woke up and I was like, I can inhale, and I can breathe, and me being stupid and young again, I was like, well, I'll try cigarettes and see if that works. And it didn't work. And I was like, oh, that's weird. It doesn't add up. But it definitely, it's hell. I don't know if it hadn't hurt as much like I thought it would, I guess. I don't know and I'm not advising, not a medical doctor. I am not telling you to end your asthma with
Smoke
weed.
joints. Well, there are your asthma.
Smoke, kids.
You heard it here.
But there are places across the country where people actually consume cannabis and do yoga and work out and do those things. And some people find that they lift better or their resilience is a little more. And it may be from the fact that it's anti-inflammatory and that maybe the strain they're using is a bronchodilator, allowing increased oxygen levels.
After my senior year of football, I had two of my teammates come up, and they were trying to get me to smoke at that time, and I was like, dude, I'm going to UK. I ain't messing this up. Like, I know I'm going to get drug tested. The school was drug testing then. We had a really strict principal and stuff, and he, they were trying to get me to do it, and I was like, no, I'm good, man, I'm good. And one of them was like, and I said something about I don't want to mess up, like, I got to work out tomorrow for UK or whatever. And one of them's like, did you notice that I got really, really good at catching the ball this year, and I was dropping a lot of passes previously? I was like, yeah, you played pretty good this year. He's like, stoned every game. he's like, I shouldn't have done it. He's like, but I'm telling you now. He's like, I was in the zone.
Smoke weed, Danny, every day.
he's like, we sneak off right, at 4:00, and he's like, we had to be back at 4:45, whatever. And he's like, we just have to go for a ride, And the more I was going on, I was like, I guess you got into the right zone. If everything was right, you would it'd be just dissecting, like it'd be cutting defenses up would be easy. Like it would just be, but then there'd be the times that like you'd forget the receivers even out there.
So that's what, So, because I found I kind of had to quit smoking regularly because I'm an actor, and I've told the story a million times now, but I was on a TV show called Carnival, and it was there that I realized my short-term memory was I was wake and bake, and then getting to set and being handed a new script, and I could not tell you what was going on.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a problem for me. But focus is, so I think it's like when you have muscle memory and you can focus on things, but trying to remember or know what's happening in a given moment. Like those are two very,
very different.
I want to learn more about like actual effects, neurological effects, like in the moment. Like, I know that there has to be studies where they're like someone's smoking joints with one of those things on their head.
Watching things change on the charts.
What is happening? What is actually happening with our like different parts of our brain, and how is it being affected?
I've been doing a lot of reading about GABA and how that works with neurotransmitters, and specifically between the mind and the stomach. And that's a very interesting topic to get into. And when you start to look at cannabis and its components and the cannabinoids and stuff, you'll find how that kind of works with GABA levels as well. So, for listeners, I won't get into a deep discussion on that, but you can just go Google those things. And while everything is not true on Google, you look for some scholarly articles and read about that. And as we start to build maybe our website, we'll start putting some links out there for folks too for those things. If we can,
are we moving on?
I want to move on to maybe.
I think like to your point that you just made about like people always make the jokes like like, well, just smoke and you'll be able to write, and thing. And I'm like, I was always a good writer growing up in school and stuff, and I'm like a storyteller and all that stuff, and so that comes natural. And like I've tried to cut back a lot just because like I was talking this morning, I was looking and like I hadn't written a song since May, and I've sat down 100 times to try to write, but I just had, and people call it writer's block or whatever, and it's probably some of that, just busy during the summer, and I was frustrated on a lot of things, and you're just not a lot to necessarily write about. But like I've found myself with like all these great ideas, like multiple albums worth of great ideas that are like, I've already got the idea, I know what the story is, I know everything, I just need to kind of put the words and not use the same words over and over again. And I would find myself like, they just wouldn't come, it would just, and I had mentioned that to some people, like, I think, the short-term stuff is kind of starting to, and there was a time that I was, especially like during COVID and all that, I would get, I don't know if abuse would be the word of it, but it was like, I was pushing the limits of it,
Yeah. I mean, my husband and I went through at the very beginning of COVID. You think, oh, we're going to be here for it's a 6-week vacation.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
On week 8, you're like, I am still drinking whiskey at noon.
Yeah, I think that was a lot.
Yeah,
folks, we were all indulging in something.
Yeah,
everybody looks like a feral cat.
Like we all just turned into hedonism in our own homes. But as a writer, I know exactly where you're coming from. Not a songwriter per se, but like
just creativity.
Well, I am an unpublished screenwriter.
Yeah.
So I have several.
I've never had anybody take one of my songs either, so we're both in it.
I have several screenplays that I've written, and I find that when I'm in different stories come out, I tend to get drunk and think of horror stories, and I'd smoke weed and think of more like esoteric, weird feminism, female power shit. But
yeah.
And so the idea is incubated when I'm intoxicated, but when I sit down to actually write dialogue, it's not happening. Everybody winds up sounding like Sean Penn in Fast Times.
It's like perfect examples. I had a song. I found this, and before this comes out, this reminds me I'm gonna have to write this song in the next month. So, but I'll give this song idea up because I was in Peru with my brother. We were backpacking through South America, and well, he was. I flew down for 2 weeks, and he had like crossed Colombia into Peru on a chicken bus with like a little black bag and got searched by the border patrol and everything there. Like, but yeah, so his was a lot more extreme than mine. But we were in this place called Huacachina, and it was this like essentially a desert oasis, and it's a 2-day story, and it's the most insane thing I've ever done, and it's a 2-day story of how we even got there. And so we wound up in this place. It's the most insane thing I've ever just done spontaneously. It worked out great. It was awesome. Could have been terrible. Right. Could have been a bad experience. But like I was up in, we were in these sand dunes, like boogie boarding off of them. And I found there was just in the middle of nowhere in the desert, there was a seashell sitting there. And like, I was like, oh, that's cool. It's crazy. Like this used to be an ocean bed, So I took a picture of it, never thought anything about it. Well, I'm just like flipping through, and the anniversary of that came up, like probably February this year. And I'm like looking down, and I'm sitting there smoking and everything. And I see that, and all of a sudden, all these ideas just start pouring in. Like it's a seashell in the desert. He's sitting there waiting for his love to come back, or he's waiting for the old times to come back, and all this stuff. Like he's just this dinosaur sitting here. He's this dinosaur fossil sitting here waiting, and like he lives in the desert now. And there was a time he's at the bottom of the sea, living it up, man. Having the best life. And I've not been able to write 1 second of it. But like I have like that idea. And like I would never think of that sober. Right. Like, it's just like it's like you're just looking at that's a cool seashell, go the next one. But you see that and you're like, there's like 10 layers of depth to this that I could go. He could be missing home, he could be missing his love, he could be whatever it may be. And but it's definitely kind of that same, I guess it's a good sweet median is what you're looking for, I guess.
But and it's the ebb of, sorry, I'm just going to help you out right now as a writer. It's the ebb and flow of life, because at
Yes.
some point that desert's going to be back under the ocean again.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
See,
I think you just may have given me the final ending to this. I'm glad I did this already.
Yeah.
so maybe by the time this gets aired, maybe we'll maybe hear.
Well, hopefully global warming won't happen quite that
Well,
fast.
Hopefully he's not back. We got a lot more problems if that happens.
Yeah. So the next question, I mean, we kind of talk about cannabis use. So would you say that you've used cannabis, or you do use cannabis for medical reasons?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know necessarily, like, one, for me, like, and some people that knew me probably 10 years ago would, like, I have terrible anxiety now. I used to not have it. And some of that I've worried that marijuana, some of it definitely is that, just like getting too high and not being able to go in Walmart. But like it,
I think we've all experienced that.
We've all told that story.
But it's anxiety was one that it really, I'm diagnosed bipolar. They put me on all kinds of medication and stuff. I just became, even the side of me that, like I mentioned that roller coaster earlier, like it was just like everything was either the highest of high or the lowest of low. Like there was just no normal day, and it just, I tried, with the bipolar stuff, like medicine worked some, but they just put you on like they were literally just trying stuff with me.
Right.
I'd had family members that had something similar, and they would just put them on all this different medication. Like they were just not like, one of them, he just became like a whole entirely different person. And then he got off of it and he went back to being just normal old self. And it was like, that's much easier to deal with than the other. And the bipolar was probably the biggest, and I'd be a sellout and say, I've got every ache and pain from football. Like I was a big fat old quarterback playing in Eastern Kentucky football. My sophomore year, they discovered that he's not allowed to hurdle, and we can just bust him at the knees and he'll fall over like a sack of potatoes. And boy, I would. And I just would take beating and beating. My knees are awful. And like, even when I've lost weight, even when I'm in health, I always say I've lost 70 pounds 3 times in my life. I can lose 20 pounds like that tomorrow. My knees don't feel any different.
Yep.
Like 70, 100, whatever you take off of them, they are busted up all to pieces. And really, the one time I crushed my foot, I used to rock blast, and I dropped out of college, and I wound up on this job, and I crushed my foot, and I didn't have to have surgery, but like it was a bad deal. I had frostbite in the middle of August in Kentucky. That's and it just kind of, it's like Garth Brooks is in here, thunder's rolling and everything.
Yeah, I was like, wasn't expecting that.
I was like, I didn't know it was going to rain.
Is that a thunder snow?
But like when they gave me all these pain pills and stuff, and I had partied enough and known at that point that was not a good situation for me to be in. I was laying in a bed with my foot crushed. I was dating a girl at the time. We broke up the week after I crushed it. So I just literally sat in this room for like 3 months. I lived by myself. My parents wanted me to move back in with them for that time. So, and I just was kind of I was like, I just need to be by myself for a little while. Like I was bad depressed and things. And I just sat in there and smoked every day. And I just refused to take those painkillers. And man, there were some bad days, like if it's going to rain, I probably should have known it. My foot was aching today. But it made those things. So, it's the only way I could have gone through it. Like, it just the very basic fact of like numbing to all that other, like it was, because if not, it was going to be Percocet or whatever it was they gave me. And it was like, buddy, let me tell you something. This ain't gonna end good.
And it's interesting.
I'm laid up here for 60 days with nothing but Percocet. Like,
yeah,
it's
And it's interesting that you bring that up and share that, because thinking about your story, I think about the many of Eastern Kentuckians who, over the years, if we had cannabis legislation here, might not have suffered the way they did when it come to the opioid addiction that we had here. And of course, we know that there is a lot of I don't know how I really want to put that, but there was a lot of movement to make that happen anyway, for financial gain.
Yeah.
I do believe so. But to think about how, you're sharing your story and how that helped you, and you knew ahead of time. And I'm not against Western allopathic care, but in this country, we've abused it in ways.
Yeah.
And for you to know that, I mean, that's awesome that you were able to take care of yourself that way.
It's deep down, it's probably like the smartest thing I've ever done in my life. Like it's the most mature thing that I've probably done in my adult life. And, it's like one of those things you can't like go up and tell your dad, look, hey, I didn't take these Percocets that they gave me, or these I had they gave me muscle relaxers, painkillers. Like it was just, I mean, and I get it. Like my foot was 4 times the size of my other one. It was black. I had frostbite. It was growing. They thought there was 3 times they talked to me about amputating it.
Wow.
And I would have to go home and sit by myself waiting for that next doctor's visit. And it's like, well, if it's better next week, we're all right. It's like,
yeah.
Let me just sit here and look at it. And just, I convinced myself like, well, I might get like a nice little, like a Captain Hook peg leg or something, like I went through all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I've used, so that's my example best of like physical, but it is, and like what you said, I mean, I could sit here and name, just a bottomless list of people that just had a job driving for the mail and had a back surgery, and then the next thing they're like in jail every other day, and like you wake up like, how you had 2 kids and a wife, like, and you had a normal life. And it's like, well, that didn't just happen. They didn't just wake up one day and say, I mean it all, buddy.
And I've known a lot of people from back home. When I introduced myself on the first episode, kind of that whole Owingsville, Mount Sterling thing, we're kind of at the foothill, the gateway of the Appalachian Mountains. And so when we talk about that, far eastern Kentucky got hit really hard with that epidemic. But looking back home at the numerous of people, like friends of mine, I've watched suffer, folks that I went to school with, people who were mentors, friends of my parents.
My mother is an opioid addict, by the way, an active opioid addict for decades now. So,
and many of them start with an injury or something that was not planned, complete accident, and never in their life did they see that coming.
And you don't, and even like looking back now, like I realized like there were family members that were just really good at hiding it. And some of them, it's like, I'm gonna be honest, it was kind of impressive, and it sucks for them because they had to just put on a, like before looking back now, it's like before they turn the corner, they have to like collect themselves,
yeah.
And like, it's not a story I'm necessarily proud to tell of Bath County, but like we were in Florida, or we were coming home from Florida for a vacation one time when I was a kid, and we got pulled over on Jellicoe, and like my dad is like very straight laced, like he's not speeding, he's not, we get pulled over, and he's like, as soon as he gets, and I've only been with him like once or twice, and if he gets pulled over, he becomes irate because he's like, I do not break the law. like I do, But so we get pulled over, and like we're just stuffed to the back, got bags and stuff all in through it. And he comes up and he's kind of looking, and he looks back and sees us sitting back there, and he said, where y'all been from? We're coming home from vacation. And he's like, oh, okay, well, so he walks back to the car, comes back, and he's like, I said, sir, I'm sorry, I'll let you go. He's like, I'm not even giving you a warning. He's like, we're actually right now, he's like, for the next 2 weeks, we're supposed to pull over any cars we see from Pike, Johnson, Letcher, McGoffin, and Bath County. And I think Menifee was on there too.
Wow.
And it was just like, oh, and I remember like that's probably like 2007, 2008. And it's kind of nothing explains me more and explains what situation I'm, or like how I view the world than like I was like middle school, high school, and Bath County is going through. We had 2 factories close. We had like the highest opioid death rate in the state, which was going to, if whatever county in West Virginia might beat us, like would make us in the country. And you had like, I remember my dad at work had like 3 customers die in 1 week, and it was just, and like once those factories closed, it was just, we had, they like went back and like, did some stuff. We're looking at some numbers, and like our unemployment rate, and people don't believe this, like, but it's real. Like Bath County they call it a recession. Bath County was at 36% unemployment during the recession. It's like, if you do a little Great Depression research, we went in a recession, we were in a depression. And people just like, oh yeah, y'all just need to toughen it up and go learn to code and stuff. And it's like, well, we don't even have coal, like but that like, and it just explains like why there's no way there's not a direct correlation between us having 36% unemployment and having the highest opioid death rate in America. That didn't just come out of nowhere. And that's the part that always like really, that kind of set how I view those, how I view like just marijuana in general, like all those, it just, I don't know, it's sad.
It is. And one of the things I like to think about that is a lot of times when I talk to people about, or the topic comes up of abuse, of addiction, is really what we need to be discussing is trauma. Because I don't believe that any addiction, whatever that is, just happens. It's something that stems from some sort of trauma. And we have to ask ourselves in this country and in this commonwealth, how do we get to a space where so many people are in a place where it's easier to take a handful of pills all day? Why? Yep. Why are they in that position?
Right.
And that's a call to our leaders. Like what are we doing about that? Yeah. How do we change that?
And I do want to touch on, just because of my intimate knowledge of it can and in many cases is caused by trauma, but it can also very much it's a disease of the mind, addiction. And it can very much be genetic. I've seen people come from perfectly happy homes, who grew up, looking like the Bradys, who have fallen into addiction. And the brain is the least understood organ in the human body. Yeah. So we know now scientifically and medically that it is a disease of the brain. We know that it can come from trauma, because trauma stops the way our brain develops, but it can also very much come from your genetic predisposition to past family that also suffers from addiction. And
like, I mean, and just being honest, like, I wish I had something to be like, oh, this just awful thing happened to me and I've just never been able to get over it. But like, I always said, I grew up in what I thought was Camelot. Like, I grew up on a cattle farm out in Bath County, and like, my parents were together. Both my grandparents were together. Like, all I did was play ball and just go, and I had, in high school, I had some stuff come up that was just that's kind of what led to me partying and kind of just taking and the worst thing ever was people incentivizing, I don't care. That was kind of when I was like, I don't care about anything. I'm going to be cool, or I'm going to be this. But there was never, like, there's not like some deep down childhood trauma thing that I've, tried to, but in retrospect, and the more I've kind of looked at it, like, and this doesn't name anybody, it's like, in my family, you got family goes, if you got 2 parents and 4 sets of grandparents, it just keeps going. So this could be anybody, but like there are people in my family that have struggled with it, and there are people that like, and then you start asking a little bit more, and you realize like, oh, well, their parents had a certain problem, and then and you go through and you're like, oh, that makes.
And also what we define now as, as what we understand to be addiction, and what we understand, addiction can also very much not look like addiction. High functioning addicts, we call them. And so especially in the 50s, anytime previous to the 50, pretty much anytime before Bill W. And I'm not talking about the president. I'm talking about the founder of AA. Before him, it was considered normal. Man comes home from work. He has his whiskey. We see this on TV. We see this in Leave It to Be. He has a glass of whiskey. Mom's up all day taking care of the kids, doing every corner of the house is, perfect, spotless, no dust. She's not doing, she's having mommy's helper in the morning.
That's
and,
right.
And, doctors were like, here, take this. Will give you all the energy you need. And,
It's like
now you can't go to sleep. Take one of these, And that was, and they didn't know that in that time, some of them didn't even realize, like, oh, I'm addicted to this
and
to
even
function.
look, even to that point, like I mean, I joke about it all the time, but like I am 100% addicted to Diet Coke. Like I'm just 100% addicted to it. And like I was in Oklahoma. I was tour managing for Chris Knight, and I am on like a dream deal, and I am sitting at the merch stand, and like I had decided that week that I was going to quit. I wasn't going to drink any Diet Coke, and I'd went like 6 days. And at the end of it, I was like, I'm going to bite somebody's head off. Like, I am a mean son of a gun. And it just went, and finally, I realized, like, I'm just going to drink one. Well, I drank one. Well, I haven't stopped since, that was last year. And I was like, I probably just need to give up on it. But like, I also realized, like, you can get addicted to just something. People are addicted to food. Like, I probably definitely am right now. Like Cannalachia.
Because again, it's our brain chemistry.
Yeah.
There's something that happens when we eat. I'm gonna guess that you're probably not addicted to cucumbers.
No, fortunately not.
But there's things that happen in our brains when we eat certain carbohydrates, when we eat chocolate, when we eat these different kinds of foods, and it alters our brain chemistry, and we can become addicted to that. Not in the way that we're addicted to you're cranky,
Right.
You're not defecating on yourself and having seizures,
Right.
but there is something altering your brain chemistry.
I can meet you with that one. One of the things that I tell people in my life is Coca-Cola, like just a Coke. And I'm saying Coca-Cola or classic because if I say Coke, people might take that the wrong way. But it's one of those things that it is such a thing. It's like I want at least one a day. And it's just, there's so many things I can take out and be like, I'm good. But sometimes I need that Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And it's so bad. And Pepsi folks don't hate me. But when I go to a restaurant, and they tell me, no, we have Pepsi, I'm like, oh, but that's just not the same.
I'm still convinced that they found a way to like chemically compound cocaine, because Coca-Cola used to have cocaine,
Right.
supposedly, blah blah blah. Like, I think that they found a way to like synthesize
so that you might not get the full action, but
Yeah.
you get the addiction
Dude,
from
a
it.
little bit. I don't know.
maybe,
You don't get the
Please
numbness,
don't
but
sue
you
me,
get the addiction.
Coca-Cola. I don't really mean it. I don't think that that's what you're actually doing. Because no, I mean it's sugar.
Yeah.
It's sugar. It's aspartame. It's and it's for the more you talk, the more you are my father's long lost son. We might have to get a DNA test. I don't know. Between the football injuries and the
Yeah.
Diet Coke and the music, I don't know. But where was I going with that? That was making me. Oh, that's what I wanted to. Because you had mentioned anxiety. You said you never really had anxiety that you were aware of.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's because I kind of feel the same. I started drinking probably. Well, there's a baby picture of me with a giant champagne glass when I was literally like probably, I don't know, 12 months old, like maybe a year.
Mine is me being held, and it's a beer. I think it was
Yeah.
our age group that
Yeah.
got that.
Yeah. Well, I know it's New Year's Eve, and my grandma's freaking out because I actually built a tower of champagne glasses, and I've got one in my hand.
Back when America was free.
Right? Freedom. But no, and so I mean, I remember. I can't really remember the first time I got high, but I can remember the first time I drank. I will not name names. But it was at summer camp. It was bad. And we my girlfriend came, and in her Foot Locker, she had water bottles, and each one was filled with a different alcohol. So there was one was gin, one was vodka, one was rum.
She had a wet bar.
She had a wet bar, and I was 12.
She had a little mixer,
my
like the
goodness.
little shaker.
I was 12, and no, we mixed it. We had Country Time lemonade, and we had Country Time peach tea, and we yeah. It was not a good situation, but that was the first time I got drunk, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I drank often
Yeah.
from there on out. When I went to boarding school, by the time I was 13, I was drinking at boarding school, and really up until probably 5 years ago when I met my husband, I was a party girl, and I never acknowledged my anxiety until I stopped drinking, and now it's not. But I have a hard time going out. Like, I think I'm gonna go out on Saturday night, but I have to like prepare my brain to like.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna see friends I haven't seen in a couple of years, and I love them. They love me, but it's like that, like people.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in public and out of my house, and I have to wear actual clothes and not pajamas, and I have to
Yes.
talk to I have to talk to people while not getting hammered.
I could just be sitting in here watching my shows in bed.
Yeah.
You know?
And because the whole I don't drink to get drunk. I might go and have a cocktail.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that in my brain of if I have one, I have to have 20. I can go and have a drink and go home and be okay.
Yeah. That like I started at about, and we had talked about my Facebook post and some of that, and I had when I was I had a little bit different of a upbringing. My parents were really well known in the community, so my some like a lot of my family was in local politics and stuff. So there was it wasn't as bad as I thought it was growing up and as it felt like, because in Bath County, everything's so small and you feel like everybody's always looking at you, always judging you. And I've had some, I used to say that to people. It's like, I don't understand why people care what I'm doing. Like, they don't care what this guy's doing. They don't care what this guy's doing. They're doing the same things I'm doing, but they're mad about me doing it. And I never did understand that. And, I walked off, we played my junior year. And when I say, like, I had went to this is the best example of what it was like. I went to one party my sophomore year when I got my driver's license. And at the end of it was that summer going to my junior year. It still to this day is the wildest party I've ever been at in my life. And it just, it's like 2000, probably like 10. So like there's still pills and all that stuff. Like it was not like we're just drinking beer. It was even like there's like other, like it was like hardcore pills, hair, like there was everything there. And after like 2 seconds, I was like, I don't need to be here. Like I need to get out of here. But we had a whole bunch of buddies with us, and there was like we were outside this trailer kind of having out in Olympia, and then we were having a good time.
Oh, I know all about that.
Yeah. And it was just it was insane. There were so many things that happened. I was like, that ain't for me. Like that just ain't me. I didn't drink. I didn't party. I didn't I didn't smoke weed. I came home when I was supposed to. I did I was working out. I lost everybody. All these college coaches told me I needed to lose 30 pounds. I lose 35. I lose 35, and the day that I weighed in and weighed 35 pounds, we were in a walk-through practice before dead period. The last practice before we just broke, we were just going through the motions, and they let this kid that he probably shouldn't have been on the team, but he probably should have been like the ball boy, something like that. He just pretty much out of nowhere just runs as like to try to tackle me or something. He said, like, I'm just standing there, and he blows my MCL out, like just barrel rolls into me.
Wow.
And I played that whole year. I had a bulging disc in my back and a torn MCL, partially torn, so I didn't have surgery on it. And the bulging disc in my back, like there were literally days I couldn't get out of bed. Like I couldn't walk. There were games I got hit that I couldn't walk to the sidelines. I crawled off the field. And I fast forward, that next year, like we were bad. We went, my freshman year, our starting tailback had like multiple D1 offers. He gets arrested the day before our first game, and we're awful. We go 2-9, 2-9 the next year. We're all like freshmen and sophomores. So the next year we're supposed to be really good. We win the first couple games and stuff. Everything's going good, and then it all falls apart. And like the group ahead of us, just quite frankly, they would even say it now. They did everything wrong. Like they made and like that was what was it was so frustrating to me because they made the wrong choices every single time. Like they were selfish. They were like they were just and they were, that's fine, man. It's high school football and things. Like if you want to go party and have a good time, that's fine. But like it was all directed back at me. Mm-hmm. And like and most of it was because of my dad and stuff, and like it just a lot of stuff, just people being ignorant in a small town. And we lost the first homecoming game in like 10 years. And I'm walking off the field, and like I went in the locker room and I'm coming back out. Everybody's got their girlfriends and stuff, and I didn't have a girlfriend or I was dating a girl. She lived in Lexington. She was in college, and so she wasn't there at that game. So like I'm kind of walking out, so I'm lonely in the first place. We just got beat. We lost the homecoming game. It's 10 years. I'm the only one on the team that even knows we've won 10 years of straight homecoming games. And there's a group of parents standing outside, and they're just absolutely dogging me. I mean, and I still this day, every single one of you, I remember who you are. I've never forgot you. And if I'm not friendly to you, it's because of that.
You can give me their names and addresses. I'll like their
I
houses
can't give
for
you one of them because one of them is one of them I have to deal with one of their family members a lot, is the nicest way I can say it. And I do like him. It's not his fault, but he has some other family members that I'm not a fan of. It's a safe way to say it, I guess. But I remember walking out, and like I threw the last play of the game was me throwing a Brett Favre from the hip bomb, like 40 yards, hitting a dude wide open. It hits him in the hands, it hits him in the face, it hits him in the hands, it hits him in the chest, and it drops on the ground. And he's standing in the end zone, and we would have won. But that's my fault. And I get that's part of playing quarterback and being a big recruit and all that stuff. Everybody expects you to just pull off miracles. Mm-hmm. And that I didn't cope with that. I'm like, right. Like you just watched that happen, and you watched all this, and we scored 36 points and gave up 37. Like it ain't our fault. Like I didn't get to play the other side of the ball. So I didn't handle it well. And I remember I left that night, and I was so mad, and I went and texted. My cousin was having a field party, and I'd asked my parents if I could go, and they were like, no, not really. They were totally against me doing it, because it was, quite honestly, that was out of my character, at that time. And I remember I went, and I took that first sip of beer, standing around that bonfire with all my buddies and all the people that I went to school with, and it was like an old country song, like those Luke Bryan was going to come out of the clouds, playing something. And man, I will never forget that feeling. It was awesome. And I felt like the world had been lifted off my shoulders, and and that just spiraled. I mean, it from that, I showed up the next season, I weighed 60 pounds heavier than I did at the year and a half prior. And I always said, I didn't change anything I didn't change nothing. I still worked out hard. Nope. Contrary to what people believed, I worked out. When your kid was sitting at home eating Funyuns, I was doing drills in the backyard, contrary to what people believed. Now, I wasn't out here trying to get abs and all that stuff. I didn't do, but I was doing the things that I was supposed to. And it was everything. I decided I'm going to do this for me. Yeah. And that was a terrible decision, bad idea, really bad idea.
But that's a huge trauma moment for a child. You were a child.
Yeah.
In all essence, as much as teenagers, we want to I'm grown.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You're not, and your brain's not grown. And these adults come and they traumatize you.
I left out the key part of this.
Yeah.
Topics was becoming the thing.
Oh, I already know about that.
And I was, and it was the first, I barely had Facebook, and I would try to, I tried not to read it. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to block out the haters. I ain't going to read that. every friend I had would be like, dude, did you see what they said? And they'd send me screenshots. And of course I'm going to read it. Or, hey, I've been fighting for you, man. And they're like, well, I appreciate it. I wish you just wouldn't tell me about it. You don't even have to argue with them. Like you're arguing with the computer screen essentially. But that, like, add that to that. Like, I mean, like they photoshopped, like I had, and I know for a fact one of the people doing it was a teammate of mine, and I knew that it was him, and people I knew, you know, there were little things in there that I knew was part of it, and like they would Photoshop my face like on like a cow, you know, and then there'd be like all this stuff, and they'd have them at games, and they'd have, you know, it was just, and like I was sitting around like, man, I thought I was the most Kentucky thing in the world as a fat left-handed quarterback, like that's what we're good at. Like it's me, Jared, everybody else, you know. It's just, but it didn't.
Well, I'm going to share something because I don't, because again, I'm going to go back to this is my father's long lost son, and I don't know if you know who my dad is.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you a little story,
Okay.
and you're going to appreciate it. And it's a football story.
Okay, great.
So when my dad was in high school, he was also a big football player. He went on full scholarship to Texas Tech.
Okay.
He wasn't a quarterback. I just think defense. I don't know. I don't know football.
Yeah.
That's my trauma. Football's my trauma.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Lubbock, Texas is his.
So he was in Dallas. He was playing in Dallas in high school, and then he went to Texas Tech for college. But when he was in high school, he I don't know, fumbled a ball. I don't know but he made a mistake on the field during the game. They lost the game. And from the stands, his own father, who was a severe alcoholic and abusive, screamed down at the field, "You are a worthless son of a bitch. You're nothing but a big old hunk of meatloaf."
Yeah.
And my father went on to become the meatloaf that you all know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Everything makes sense now.
Right?
Okay.
So that was
Yeah.
my dad. That was one of my dad's horrific. Because then, after his father did that to him from the stands, of course, his team, he comes into the locker room the next day, and Meatloaf is on his locker instead of, you know, ML, and because his name was Marvin Leaday was his born, so he was already ML.
Yeah.
That's what everybody called him. And
So it fit too well.
and so now he was Meatloaf, you know, and and so and he carried that on with him, and that's what people called him from 16, 17 years old and through college, and they got him a jersey that said Meatloaf on, you know, but it was trauma for him, but he was, you know, like you, he's I'm going to joke about it too. Until he got to working off Broadway with Joe Papp and doing Shakespeare in the Park and all that whole from going from football to Broadway is still kind of a mystery. I mean, I get it, but it's a funny transition. But
Teamwork.
right? Yeah, it's true. That's true. Very much. But yeah, and so he told Joe, he was like, "Well, this is my real name, but everyone's called me Meatloaf my whole life." And Joe Papp thought about it for a second, said if Shakespeare was alive today, then Meatloaf would be a character in one of his plays. The name stays.
So I have a question for you about that. You say, you know, that was his trauma, and from the outside looking in, I see that as transmutation, like it was transmuted. So at home, as him being dad and being family, was the term meatloaf, I mean, I know he took that and he ran with it, but was that still traumatic to him, like at home?
No, no, and it went in the 80s when Sony, I get the ebb and flow of life. The Sony records came after him for I think, you know, $200 million, which like didn't exist in that. You know, I think he had like 40 million, and that was massive. You know, and they took everything. But sort of similar to Tina, not quite. But when he went to court, Sony tried to claim his name.
Oh,
and so obviously he went back to, you know, doing you know, Shakespeare in the Park with Joe Papp and pulling Raul Julia and all these people in to testify that no, we called him Meatloaf in the 60s. But Dad went as far back as to somehow got the coach, because his father died when he was a teenager of cirrhosis, but they got the football coach, who was like now in his 90s, to come and take the stand supposedly and tell the story of how that name came into
Cool.
being. And so he, you know, Sony got the millions and he got his name.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. And you know what's weird? Like with mine, my parents, like in that situation, my dad was, his dad was really hard on him in sports, you know, on things just in the general on that. But like, my dad was great to me. Like he didn't say anything to me during games. He never made things worse. Like that was his big thing. Like he would, now during practice, like he just on me, you know, and he should be, you know, that's where I'm getting better. And that's the way I believe in that firm. But like, that was probably what the hardest part of all that was at that time was like, my parents were like, they didn't give me a reason to be mad at them. Like they were on my team.
Yeah.
But like in retrospect, like I punished them.
Right.
And like that wasn't fair. And like I punished my brothers and all my family. Like I took it out on everybody that I loved and I cared about, you know, and I'm just a typical, you know, like addict, like story of like, I just flipped that script and I just made everybody that loved me hate me, and you know, and just made it brutal to be around, and they understood, you know, like what, you know, they thought it was terrible, all, you know, that I had to deal with that, but you know, it wasn't fair to them, and it wasn't, but like they weren't, you know, my dad wasn't screaming at me out of the stands, like he was just sitting up there like, I think it's crazy too, man, you know, like it's, but it.
Well, good on you, Mr. and Mrs. Kissik.
I've always, you know,
Good job.
my parents were great, you know, and I've fought with them, and you know, I'm sure they would laugh and be like, I don't know they would, like, you didn't mean that, you didn't believe that, you know, a couple years ago, you know, and that's just being young and stupid on most of it. That's my big. I'm just now getting to the age to realize how stupid I really was. You know, about 6 months ago.
I'm 40. I'm 42. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 42, and I figured it out about 6 years ago.
Sweet.
So
all right,
know,
I've got a couple. I'm 29 right now.
there you
so,
go. Okay,
rolling
you
right
got
through.
7 more years.
Yeah, I'm being really stupid. Yeah, sweet.
No, you're good. So
It's dangerous.
I haven't really talked to you much about your music, which I'm remiss. I don't know how long we've already been talking.
An hour and 10 minutes.
So how much more time do we have?
I mean, we have until your phone is the first one to go.
Okay. So, you don't know how long it is? All right, I do want to touch a little bit on your music, though, before we let you. Normally, our shows are only an hour long, but this has been such a great interview and a great conversation.
Yeah, if you get me telling stories, we'll never get out of here.
Super relatable. No, I don't necessarily. So, but I do want to. So, country blues, is that?
Probably be a good, be kind of that'd be a good sweet spot for it. You know, I just released a bluegrass record, but
Okay.
that was kind of, you know, the bluegrass stuff. It was rolled into. I mean, I'll be quite honest. I just woke up and had like 11 Grammy nominations or what Grammy winners, like Grammys won, of people that, you know, I could work with on it, and they just kind of all fell in my lap, and I was
Amazing.
like, I got to do this, you know.
Yeah.
And that's living in Bath County. There's bluegrass pickers laying around everywhere, and they know all they've played, you know, if they played Poppy Mountain twice, or Rudy Fest, they all know each other. So, I mean, I had like on the album we had Clay Hess used to be with Ricky Skaggs. He's with Larry Cordell now, and right after he finished that record, he went back with Ricky for a little while, filling in for Jake Workman while he was out, and had Adam Haynes on fiddle from the Grascals. You know, they had just got nominated for a Grammy like the year before that. We had Randy Coors, who any of Dirk Bentley, he's done a ton. Like, I mean, he did Copper Stripping Blues, the one I sent you all, and
Very cool.
he did all the dobro work and all that. And Jason Hale, Jason was the one that, and I should give him all the credit on it. He got it all set up. He knew everybody, knew all those guys, got them to help me out on doing this record. And I'm really, you know, we had 4 songs. That's kind of how we went into it. And I just brought these 4 songs over to his studio, and I was like, I always want to get these tracks so we can get a band version of them for live stuff. And after I got done with them, he's like, you ever thought that maybe you wrote some bluegrass. And I was like, well, that's kind of the way I heard them, but you know, I play country all the time, and I play, you know, kind of blues stuff a little bit more. We've never really gone towards the bluegrass side. Now, I love bluegrass music, and that's the reason why I was writing it, because that's why it was during COVID. I was listening to Dave Evans and Tony Rice and all that stuff, and got way, way, way down the wormhole on it, and we had those 4 songs, and we recorded them, and I went home, and I was like, well, I'll come back in 2 weeks and see what we got, and see if I got some other stuff I can work. Well, I wrote those other 4 songs like 2 days later, and it was just kind of all flowing, and we wound up, we kind of changed up 2 other ones that we had, and put some steel on it. And I was listening to John, oh man, I'm going to go crazy here, not John Langston. Oh, John, no, I'm gonna go. I can't.
I'm not well acquainted enough with bluegrass to help you out on that one.
Like,
I'm over here going, John Prine.
Yeah, no. I'll think of this name in just a minute, but he had essentially done like a kind of a country blues, essentially what I had done on that record, and he had some pedal steel he'd throw in and some stuff that like would drive a traditional bluegrass person insane, and so we had to throw some of that in at the end.
I love that though. Music is for breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I came across the whole Salt Lick Shuffle.
Oh yeah.
And I have a fine appreciation for that.
Sweet.
It made me think about. So I don't know if you remember this, because I'm a bit older than you, but because they don't do it anymore. But they used to be. So there's a place where we grew up that's called Salt Lick.
I've heard of it.
And
I think
so
I've driven through
maybe
it.
in the spring or something, maybe we'll do some country cruising over in Bath County. Okay.
Right.
Need to go to Tater Knob. Make them take you
up to the tower. We'll go to
place.
Tater Knob. But there used to be a Salt Lick homecoming, and
Yes.
it was this whole like in the little town, and there was like amusement rides, and there was live music and dancing in the streets, and this was something I remember as a kid.
Yeah, it was huge.
And they don't do it anymore. But when I heard that song, that was the first thing I thought out.
Yeah.
I thought about. I was like, this is awesome. So yeah, that was super cool.
We
when I ran across
we're
that.
hopefully we're supposed to already had it locked down, but hopefully here in the first of the year, I'm gonna be down in Nashville and get that recorded and do it. We're gonna do a country record.
Nice.
It's probably if anybody wants some advice on your musical career, if you're a country artist, and you're very clearly a country artist, and I will say one thing, I learned a lesson. I was like, I'm gonna take some risk. Maybe people will like some baritone in their bluegrass. No, they don't. They want them all to come out with their belts cinched real tight and hit that high tenor and just.
I'm gonna go again with music is for breaking the rules.
Right,
I mean, look, my
yeah.
dad had an amazing career for 40, 50 years. I can't do math, but since 1960 something, and he never followed the. He was a 350-pound guy with long hair. Singing rock opera. Calling himself a sex god. So he wasn't fitting in with the Jim Morrisons at the time, and certainly not in the 90s when he made his commercial resurrection. Reoccurrence with Bat 2, and I would do anything for. There was nothing like I would do anything for love when that happened in the 90s.
Yeah.
So keep breaking rules, man. That's what my dad would say.
That I need to keep that in mind, because like I was telling everything, like with the country album, I'm glad that I haven't done it, because like there are some songs that I would have definitely put on it that aren't. They're just not up to it, and that like I'm excited. Like I know right now that I don't have some of the songs written that's going to be on it, because I can just kind of, like I was talking about earlier, like I can, I've not written a song since May, but I can feel it. Like it's just I literally just need an hour to sit down and just bust them out. Like it's like, and I get excited during that time, but there are. You progress as a writer and you get a little bit better. So like some of those I'm probably, I don't have them necessarily, like I don't have the record I have envisioned is a little bit different than what it would have been a year ago. It's a lot different, honestly. And I'm glad that I had those I had something to put out. It's a full band thing. It's kind of like I've released that, and then we'd been playing all these full band country shows, and I've like got a monster honky tonk band, playing behind me, and then they're like, "Didn't you just release a bluegrass record? Like, where's the banjo?"
Great. It's kind of like the movie, if you build it, they will come. If you sing it, if you record it, and it's truthful to who you are, they will listen.
Yeah, that's I have like good examples. Like I met Nolan Taylor right before he blew up, like 2 weeks before it. We were at the Burl doing a deal, and we just kind of we were sitting there talking because we were the only two Bengals fans in there, and like the Bengals were on TV playing, and like nobody, I'm in there going crazy in the Burl green room, and everybody else just looking at me like this guy's ridiculous. And Nolan was too, and but like I remember when he played that song 68 at the Burl that night, and I was like, man, that's just like you can just that first couple lines, he's like, lighting up cigarettes in 7th grade. That's what my mother taught me. Stuff like that. And she was falling asleep. We're driving down 68. And he's driving just to get him home. And man, that's got to be so like that's being vulnerable. Like, and that's you don't want to get up there and just. I like having a good time, and like Copper Stripping Blues is about a night I spent in the Moorhead jail, but I turned it into a funny song. That's kind of my version of doing it. I want to try to get better at being more heartfelt and things, because that seems to be like if people catch that connection now, like, and you just go off like a rocket ship. And
I think there's something to be said for being vulnerable, but again, I think it goes back to authenticity.
Yes.
So my dad didn't write his own music, right? We all know Jim Steinman was his writer for as long as the two of them, existed on this planet. They actually passed away almost a year apart. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But what Jim wrote was his truths. Now, he wrote in a lot of metaphors, and it was all very poetic, and he lost a great love at some point in college. To this day, I've known him literally my entire life. I don't know if that love was a man or a woman.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's, what I mean? Like, it's not explicit in that, and his writing, but his writing was authentically him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't graphic. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't, this is my this particular Cindy Williams broke my heart,
Right. Yeah. And I've thought like that, like I've tried to do it more like where it's kind of like when I write something to kind of be, I want to try to make this where it's for everybody, like not just do like I wrote this song called Hell of a Woman, and like I'm going through it, and like it flips back and forth between him and her like so many times that by the time there's plenty of times like I mess it up, and like I'll stumble over and I'll say her, and if you really listen and you're like, who's he, what's he talking about?
Right.
Like who's doing what, like who, but like after I did that, I was like, all right, never again. Like I'm going to make this where anybody, if you want to it to be about whoever, knock that out of the way.
Yeah.
But however you want to figure it up, like it can fit anybody.
Make it universal. I mean, I think Childers just did an amazing example of that.
It's like nobody knew until they watched the video, and it's
everyone made presumptions based on who he is and the fact that he's married to a woman and all of the, and then with Silas's help in creating that video, it can be for anybody.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, and
you can still listen to it, and it can pertain to your heterosexual relationship, or you can listen to it can pertain to
you can both dance to it at your wedding.
Yeah.
Right.
A homosexual
which is what I thought it was for.
or it could be a completely platonic. I could listen to. I've lost a lot of friends over the past couple of years during COVID, and family, and it could be about family. It could be about a familial love. It could be about a platonic best friend. It's it's a beautiful, heartbreaking, gorgeous, universal song.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things too, the experiences when you're looking at artistry and music and songs and the, like you're saying, authenticity, but to be able to take that journey with someone else, and I think coming out of the pandemic, if anything, at least what I feel or what I've noticed, is I feel like that people are yearning for more of a community, whether that be their local community, whether that be like not necessarily a place of worship or something like that, but just that we all struggle with something. Or multiple things.
Yeah.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, when we all go home, a lot of those struggles are the same.
Yeah.
They're just a different journey. And I think when we can use art to be able to tell those stories and understand them and feel them with one another, I think it's extremely healing.
It is.
Yeah.
So I'm because you've already given us your piece of advice, but I'm gonna have one more question for you, and then I want to listen to the song that you sent over. So I know country and bluegrass and blues. So who's an artist, a musical artist that inspires you that would surprise us?
Yeah, I like this question. I got to thinking about when I was younger. I was, and I don't know that necessarily would surprise, like you would say, like I love Tina Turner. Like that was my thing when I was a kid. And I think a lot of it was like I heard Ike in the Proud Mary, and I was like, hey, I can do that, and I guess that was more. But then, I started learning some more of the stuff, and I was like, I'm gonna be more on Tina Turner fan. It just says, it was like
it's okay. Chill made me be Ike at the Tina Turner tribute, but
sweet, cool. But I grew up like I always joked. The first band that I played with was my buddies from high school. We essentially they were a band called Brute Force. They were a screamo band that would play down at the Ag Center in those shows that they used to have. And we just took the screamer out and put me in and said, now we're a country band.
So is it country metal?
We tried to do a lot of country. We should have stuck to the metal. I should have left them alone is what I should have done, like in the grand scheme of things. We had a good time and everything, but during that time I loved Emarosa and like Johnny Craig and My Chemical Romance, some of those, and I know those aren't necessarily exactly the same, but like I loved like a lot of that. I don't know if it's not necessarily punk rock or whatever. It's not screamo. It's kind of, we always called it emo, I guess, whatever.
Emo, pop punk.
Yeah, and my girlfriend jokes, she's like, you need to mention Hinder, that Lips of an Angel or whatever. I hear that song and I'm like, yes, like this is it. Like it's just so nostalgic. Like it
is, I feel like there's a period in our youth where, some of that bubble gum, it's there. It's on the radio. It's what we hear at school.
It was on 104.5, man.
I know, right? It's cool. That's awesome.
But yeah, that would definitely, I don't know, and I could go, yeah. That's the one thing I've always tried to be, and I've not. In the last couple years, I have really narrowed down, and I think it's mainly because I've really narrowed my sound down, and I went back and got way into the people that you would expect, like Merle Haggard and all that, and going down those going way down into the wormholes on them and stuff. And I always grew up listening to a ton of those Texas songwriters and a lot of that stuff. And so I loved Guy Clark and Charlie Robinson and all those Townes Van Zandt and all that. Before it's kind of cool again to like that stuff. Like it was my little brother always talks about. He's like, it was not cool to like Tyler Childers, Chris Knight, and Townes Van Zandt. And he's like, then I got to college and everybody wants to be listening to Tyler Childers and Townes Van Zandt all day. But I try to, and I thought about that the other day. That I really, I don't really like hair rock, like hair metal and things like that. But I love Creedence Clear. Those are
that's not.
Those are very generic.
Hair metal is Motley Crue.
Right. Yeah. But I just mean there are certain things in rock and roll that I do. Yeah. I like a little bit of everything. I will say, I cannot stand modern pop country, modern pop rap, whatever I just anything that's bubblegum. I need some depth.
So you're not a Swiftie.
No. Off the record, no. On the record, don't get those people after
everybody
me.
loves Taylor Swift.
I love her.
We all love her. We all wear bracelets.
I've seen what they do to people.
I have to mention, you had mentioned something earlier about like through that phase of like Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a phase for me. It started as a phase because I'd country cruise.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I would take a toke or two, and I probably shouldn't tell it on myself. Put the top down on a convertible, cruise through P Sticks, and back where we grew up, there's a place called P Sticks, and that's where one of the places country cruise. And many days did I listen to some Grateful Dead, but you know, there's days that happen now. I'm on the road, and I flip in that Grateful Dead. I'm not token, but I'm listening to the Grateful Dead at that moment. But you know, but I thought of it earlier when you mentioned that, and then you mentioned CCR, and that was another one that would be on that playlist.
Oh yeah. I went through a huge phase of that, like with the Grateful Dead and all that. And a band that I love and is, I guess, would be out there for lack of a better term, is Southern Culture on the Skids. Mm-hmm. I love them, and like, I mean, I just, as soon as I heard Camel Walk, and I was like, yep, it's, I don't really know what this is, but this is me. I guess is what I want.
I love that.
But yeah, that's I go. You're in for a roller coaster when you're with. You
As
might
it
go.
should be.
Yeah, right.
As an artist, as it should be. You know, we have to be open, whatever our field of art is, to a variety of
It's like everybody should
genres.
Everybody should listen to Tony Rice. Like, you know, just as much as insert whatever, you know, that everybody should listen to CCR, or, you know, all that. Like, those. You should expand yourself, and like try to see the world. Like, there are things that they talk about in bluegrass that, hey, you might hear it and be like, oh, that sounds familiar. Like, I've done that, or, you know, there might be something you hear like in a rap song or something. Like, hey, I've done that too. Like, that's done a lot more of that.
So what is tell us about the song that you brought us tonight that we're about to listen to.
So the song is Copper Stripping Blues. You know, we talked on it a little bit here, and you know, I wound up getting in some trouble, is a nice way of saying it. And I always say Moorhead has, they have the state police, they have city police, they have sheriff, they have campus police, they have park rangers, they have, like, for the forestry service, they have the fish and wildlife. That is my PSA for Moorhead, saying if you want to go to jail, you can do it in Moorhead. Like, it's a lot easier than what you think it is. I found myself sitting in Round County Regional Detention Center one night, and I've kind of go through the same spiel every time before I play it, because I like to give people a heads up, like, hey, here comes a song about copper stripping, and I like to see their reaction. Like, you can kind of see them like looking at you. But I wound up sitting there listening to a guy tell me a story about for 8 hours about a Def Leppard concert that I know for a fact never happened. Like, he made it all up.
When the show's over, I want to hear about that.
Yeah.
So
He's sitting there talking to us about it, and he said, I had to call into work, and and me and this guy looked over at each other, and he's like, called into work? He's like, you ain't got no job. Like, he's like, and they knew each other, and he's like, you ain't got no job. What are you talking about? And he's like, well, I had called in my day job. And he made a little laugh and everything. And I said, well, what's your day job? He said, well, it's more of a nighttime job. He said, I strip a little copper on the sides. And he laughed again, and I was like, great, man. This right where I need to be. Like, like I just wanted to be anywhere else but there. He said, my family, he said, they're hard on me. He said, they say I'm lazy and they say I'm no good. He said, but I'm going to tell you what. He said, I ain't saying it's honest work, but now, damn it, it's hard work. He said, there's been some late nights I've had to work. He said, I pulled some late third shifts, and I was like, God, get me out of here. And so a couple of years, I went back and I was telling a couple buddies that story, and they're like, man, that's a song. And I was like, absolutely. And there was a part in the middle where he's like, he said, when he said it to me, he said, they call me a piece of shit. He said, but I'm more of a craftsman. Well, and which that doesn't rhyme. And I was like, I'm going to try to make this come close to rhyming. And that's the part I love about songwriting, is you'll hear one part in here that It's open to interpretation if it rhymes. You know, like
I like it.
But it makes it fun. I don't have any other way of doing it than just to might as well make fun of it. Like we got the copper stripping blues.
Well, let's go. Let's listen to some copper stripping blues.
Pulled off another all-nighter. His payload is a little lighter, but it's enough to get me through the month. I got a buddy that'll help me out. He lives on the other side of town. He knows all the best spots there is around. It's line of work, no, it ain't pretty. A time or two, it's almost killed me, but I'm still here trying to get by. If I could start brand new, I'd find me something better to do than getting through these copper stripping blues. Vacation, enjoy that dream destination, having fun out there in the sun. Some say I'm a piece of shit, well I call it craftsmanship, cursed with a talent that ain't to be desired. This line of work, no it ain't pretty, time or two it's almost killed me, but I'm still here trying to get by. Could start brand new, find me something better to do than getting through these copper stripping blues. It all and start new today. The times are tough and prices are high. Nights like these are my time to shine. Well, I'm starting in my own Broadway play. This line of work, no, it ain't pretty. Time or two, it's almost killed me, but I'm still here trying to get by. Oh, get by. Well, if I could start brand new, find me something better to do than getting through these copper stripping blues. Yes, getting through these copper stripping blues.
That was fantastic.
That's nice.
I love that.
I like that too.
And I do a piece of shit craftsmanship.
Yeah,
You know, if you say it just
it
right.
works. Yeah, it works.
So is that a new release, or is that on the Exit 123?
Yeah, that's on Exit 123.
Which
So
is
that's
available now?
available. Yep. Spotify, iTunes, all those places. YouTube, whatever. I've got CDs.
I love it.
It's
I would say when you play next, but this won't air till January. So
Yeah.
do you have any gigs coming up?
I am actually. Friday was my last gig for this year, so I have the next couple weeks off. Which
Good on you.
But we're right January 5th. We're right back at it. So
There you go. Back on tour.
just go to clarkkissik.com. You'll find it all.
That's
on
what I
there.
was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Where can people learn all of that?
Clark Kissik on Facebook, Clark Kissik on Instagram, on TikTok. Man, yeah, I know that's where it's at, but man, I just feel old and I feel wrong.
You feel old.
You're 29.
It's just it's not for me. Is what I know. I was one of like the first people on. I was like one of the first 3 people in Bath County on Twitter. You know, like I used to have like I remember on my old Twitter I had like a ton of followers and stuff, and everybody was like, "How did you?" And I was like, "I was a football recruit." and I was just the first dude on there. And everybody showed up. It's like, let's see what Clark's going to say. And a couple of them
Unless
stuck
you
around.
had a top 5 on MySpace.
Oh,
You're
well,
not that
yeah.
old.
Well, I did. I actually had a Bebo before. That was my first one.
Okay.
So that was a get on my dial up out in Tunnel Hill, and we had dial up until I was in high school.
Nice.
And but now I say that, and I always sound really, really old. It was not because like fast internet was available. It was just not available in Tunnel Hill.
Right.
That's called growing up in Bath County.
Fair enough. Well, Clark, I want to...
Well, if you don't care, I want to give him a little gift here.
Oh, yes.
So these are what we call cannaboggins. So
Sweet, thank
if you want to wear that with pride.
Sweet.
And for your aches and pains, our company, Ancient Aromas, makes a roll-on called Chill. So you can shake that up and put that on your knees, feet, back, whatever hurts you or ails you. That'll be good. And then... I've got 2 pair of these. You can give one to your other half. But
Okay.
I brought this because I remember your grandma in school.
Yes.
And what I remember about her is that she always had like the most interesting earrings. Like we just knew that she was going to have a different pair of earrings every day of the year. And her name's Mary Jane, so I would like to send her a pair of Mary Janes. I
That's
don't know if she'll
awesome.
wear them for us, but you can send them to her.
Maybe not on
and,
school days.
Yeah.
And you have...
She is actually retired.
Oh, good.
She retired 30 years of subbing when I was a kid. She retired 10 years of subbing. Like, there's a second retirement they can do. She did it like 2 years ahead of time. Then she is retired now a third time from subbing. So I think she's finally done.
All right.
done.
So she
But-
can wear those on girls' night out. or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
So,
Down there. On their trips to the dinner bell in Flemensburg.
I think that'd be great. I think that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. But yeah, so you'll have to tell us and hello
That's
and,
awesome.
and share
Thank
those
you.
with her. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming.
And thank you for
Um,
being so open with us.
Oh
and
yeah,
sharing
this has
all
been a
your
blast.
stories.
Yeah, I really appreciate y'all having me. This is a lot of fun. You know, I'm gonna be honest. I could have told you it was gonna go over whatever it was. You know, I was gonna try to give you a warning when I first got here. Like, hey, if I start rambling, just cut me off. Like, I just, you know.
No, but I enjoy listening to everything you had to say, and I think a lot of your story, it's important for
Yeah.
people, you know, especially in your age group and people that come from your background, and to understand, and for people, those that don't understand cannabis as a form of medical, you know, healing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we're doing this, is to let people tell their story so that people can, just like we talk about the music, finding those moments that we share. Someone out there has a similar situation.
Yeah.
And
Or someone out there making laws doesn't get it.
that's exactly right.
Someone
And
needs to go to a Billy Strings concert.
that sounds like a lot of fun. To be
Yeah,
honest with
yeah.
you. So, but yeah, this is going to be a special episode for me, just because I got someone from back home on here. But I really
time.
appreciate you being a part of this, and I look forward to this hitting the airwaves.
Yeah.
So
So go out, get Clark's album, go see his live shows, buy some merch, and we'll see y'all next time.
Yeah.
And we'll have you back on.
That sounds great. Just give me a shout.
Go with me, go with me. Everybody wanna play while they're on the play. Everywhere everybody's better on the play. Better read that with the body. Better 55 grand for the brain. If my mouth is about gold, okay. If you high with me, if you want to play, never he got love with the breath. We can let it, come on, Cannalachia.